are talking Cybertracker 2, directed by Richard Pepin, who of course directed the original movie, along with a whole bunch of other science fiction movies in the 90s. And this one once again stars Don the Dragon Wilson, and it's a follow-up to the 1994 movie Cybertracker, albeit there are a couple of inconsistencies in story here. So it's a 1995 movie, so it made a year after the original, although it does take place a few years after the first movie story-wise. And it's kind of one of these movies, like I've said in the first one, where the kind of the straight-to-video market at that time was awash with RoboCop and Terminator-style films, because they were the films du jour of the time. That was the kind of the popular thing. So we had tons of kind of cyborg movies in the market, and this was one of them. We didn't get a third movie though; it was just the two of them. Now, this one, the plot is this: so Don the Dragon Wilson's character is now some type of undercover agent, and he's kind of trying to bust crimes, and we see a kind of example of this at the beginning of the movie. And his wife, who was once a kind of freedom fighter for the rights of kind of humans against androids or something, is now a reporter, but she is framed for a murder because these kind of the bad guys have used a cyborg duplicate of her to assassinate someone. So now he's got to try and kind of clear his wife's name, and also gets kind of implicated himself when there's a cyborg that looks like him, kills a bunch of kind of police. So now they're on a run again, much like they were in the first movie, trying to stop a variety of faceless goons and cyborgs. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. So the original movie was somewhat of a lackluster kind of entry into the vast swathes of movie that came out that were trying to take advantage of the success of Terminator and RoboCop, and it wasn't terrible, but it was pretty unmemorable, to be honest. This one I think is marginally better, purely because this movie has some of the things that I think the other movie lacked. Primarily, the actual cyborgs themselves are a little bit more menacing in this one. In the first movie, we had these kind of the one model of cyborg, so to speak, but they were relatively kind of easily dealt with. Here, they actually seem a little bit tougher, and there's the actual kind of cyborg version of Don the Dragon Wilson especially is incredibly tough, and doesn't seem to go, maybe a little bit too tough. Maybe they swung the pendulum in a little bit too far in the other direction, but there's, they at least are a substantial threat. This movie is also extraordinarily action heavy. There is essentially, an action kind of set piece every couple of minutes. You won't have to wait long until there's another action sequence. In actual fact, I mean, it's not always a good thing, and I'll come on to that again in the negatives, but there is a hell of a lot here. There's a hell of a lot of car chases in this movie as well. It's a bizarre amount of car chases. You'd almost be forgiven for thinking this is some type of vehicular-based movie, but no, it isn't. There's just a hell of a lot of car chases and, big petrol explosions and things like that. But nonetheless, there is kind of a lot of action, a lot of gunfights, and I like we get a little bit more kind of idea about how these kind of cyborgs are working, mainly kind of from the bad guys and their mischievous plans about how it all works, everything like that, and having these kind of duplicates are a little bit more kind of, it adds a little bit more intrigue to proceedings. And we have a variety of different cyborgs on display here. And we actually even get a good guy cyborg. One of the kind of the same models from the first movie actually ends up being somewhat kind of a protagonist kind of character that actually helps our kind of team of good guys. So it's certainly an action-packed movie. Lots kind of going on in regards to shootouts, explosions, fight scenes, and everything like that. So it rattles on at a kind of a fair old pace. And I kind of quite like our cackling bad guy businessman as well. I thought he was quite a kind of a fun character with a few kind of henchmen that I thought were quite kind of memorable as well. So what doesn't work? Don the Dragon Wilson really isn't the most charismatic of kind of leading men in regards to these kind of straight-to-video kind of movies that we had in the 90s. I actually think he works better as the bad guy version of himself here, all kind of dressed in black and stuff, and you know, not really having much in regards to kind of the dialogue. Requires a little less acting, to be honest. I think he works better like that, but he, you know, he's not the greatest of kind of actors. You know, obviously he's a good fighter and everything in regards to his kind of real-life kickboxing abilities, but acting-wise, you know, some movies are better than others, but this one doesn't require a lot, and yeah, it's not the best. But and to be honest with you, the rest of the cast don't fare much better either, with some kind of like hammy characters to kind of start with, some that seem sort of perfectly superfluous, really, including this kind of like hunky kind of cameraman kind of cohort that they have, and I was like, what's its actual purpose? It seems completely unnecessary and things like this. There's maybe a few too many kind of henchmen here and there as well. There's a little bit, you know, lots of kind of like goons that seem to spring out of the woodwork and just stand in the middle of kind of an open field of fire to get shot and things like this. So it's very action heavy, like I've mentioned, but you'll be forgiven for wanting a little bit more meat on the bones, because it just feels like a kind of an empty action sequence after an empty action sequence. Now, in the 90s, certainly with the straight-to-video kind of market, you know, they weren't too worried about in-depth characters and, you know, having complete arcs and things like this, and even having consistency with the previous movie. It was just like, let's have lots of kind of like action set pieces, lots of fights, and people will be happy with that. But these days, you know, if you look at it with kind of modern eyes, it seems a little bit on the shallow side, to be honest, with just kind of lots of kind of action sequences that kind of blend into one. I mean, how many kind of like, you know, cars running into another car and exploding can you kind of see in one movie? And that's just, so there's just, the body count is massive in this movie, which might, you know, appeal to some people, but there just seems to be like an endless supply of kind of bad guys who just seem to almost invite getting shot, as well as kind of police. I mean, so many kind of police get shot in this movie, and one little kind of tidbit as well, the actual police, I mean, the whole movie itself, they just seem to have grabbed any type of prop that has been laying around, because you actually notice a lot of the police wear the same uniforms as the aliens from the mini-series, although some police have different uniforms and things like that, maybe even looks like maybe Captain Power. So there's kind of like a little bit of kind of just like a hodgepodge of kind of props and stuff which were used from other kind of properties and things. They've even reused some footage from the original kind of movie. So, you know, it's not a particularly kind of deep film. Even though there's a lot on screen going on, I have to be honest with you, it kind of gets a little bit dull, because, you know, as much as you can kind of enjoy all the kind of the action set pieces, it just feels there's no real weight to them. There's no, you know, you get faceless goons just kind of dropping dead. They never really feel like, you know, they have any chance of killing our characters and things like that. So they're just there to kind of have a body count, and thus the kind of the movie really just feels kind of, you know, generic and kind of, again, somewhat kind of lackluster. I do think it has some elements that are a little bit maybe plussed from the original movie, but it's not much, if I'm honest. So a lot of the kind of the same critiques I had with that first film, I have with this one as well. It's just a kind of like, it's an okay time waster. You know, there's a lot going on screen. You know, you've got to give it up for the kind of the stunt work and the kind of the amount of you know, set pieces and explosions and action sequences this movie has for what is obviously a lower budget movie. So that does kind of maybe give it a point above what I scored the last one. So I will give this one a 5 out of 10, because there is a little bit more variety in regards to the cyborgs and things like that as well. So it's a 5 out of 10 for me, but it's pretty kind of forgettable, to be honest. There are better cyborg movies that kind of came out around that kind of same period. 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.